Good morning. 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 Hey y'all, good morning. Welcome to uh, good morning. Welcome to Morning Devotion with Pastor Jew. Good morning, good morning, good morning. As you all come on in, welcome to Morning Devotion with Pastor Jew. Glad to have you on with us this morning. Glad to have you on with us this morning. We are in a shaking part 7. We're still finishing up a shaking part 7. We are in the book of Acts, Acts chapter 16, Acts chapter 16, verse 36. Acts 16:36. I'll put that in the comment. Acts 16:36. So one of the things that we shared yesterday about the jailer being the one to release them, right? Um, the jailer being the one to walk them out, and the jailer took them to their house, locks them out of jail, and takes them to their house. And while they're at his home eating, getting refreshed, um, his whole family gets saved, right? And so we talked about how the one who is assigned to hold you back, hold you down, the one who's assigned to come against you ends up being the one that's going to help you, right? So that was yesterday. And if you miss any part, as you all come on in, tap, tap, our love, please share out with your followers. Hit the share button at the bottom and share with your followers. So we talked about yesterday the jailer being the one who was supposed to guard them ends up being the one who walks them out, right? He ends up being the one to walk them out. And not only is he the one to walk them out, verse 36 is important because he's not only the one who walks them out. Listen, it says in verse 35 and verse 36, listen, when it was daylight, the magistrates sent their officers to the jailer with the order, release these men. Verse 36, the jailer told Paul, the magistrates have ordered that you and Silas be released. Now you can leave and go in peace. And so not only is the jailer the one who walks him out, but he's now the one who is fighting for them. Because now begins this discourse between the jailer and the magistrates. Verse 37, Paul says, no, they beat us publicly and they want us to leave quietly. They have to escort us out. And then the officers report this back to the magistrates. And so there's this back and forth. Listen, there's this back and forth now where the jailers, the officers, are now fighting for Paul and Silas's rights as relates to no, they want us to just go out quietly because of this shaking. The shaking scared them. What just happened scared them. They saw what happened by having us in this jail. The shaking shook them up, right? The shaking challenged them. And so now they just want me to go away and go in peace. And Paul and Silas like, nope, go back and tell them. So not only is the jailer the one who brings them out the first time, remember, he ushers them out, takes them to their house, refreshes them while he's there. His whole family gets saved. But now the jailer and the other officers are fighting their case. Listen, they are fighting their case. Paul says, no, you go back and tell them we're not going out. So now there's this back and forth. The magistrates find the jailer. They give the jailer a message. Jailer takes the message to Paul and Silas. Paul and Silas says, no, go back. Basically, at this point, the jailer now becomes their attorney. The jailer basically becomes their attorney. No, I'm not taking that deal. We don't want to go out quietly. We don't want to go out privately. You beat us publicly. You're going to escort us out. And so the jailer, he will have to stand up for you. Come on, Yvette. Listen, Y'all not ready for the shaking. See, a shaking is not just about, and this is what happens with this story. Oftentimes people stop at, and at midnight, Paul and Silas prayed. But there's so much happens as a result of the shaking. The people, the jailer, the match, they're so shook up by the shaking because the shaking not only looses Paul and Silas bands, it looses all the prisoners' bands. All the doors are open. So they are shook up by this shaking. And the jailer, not only is he one that walks them out, he now becomes their attorney. He becomes their legal representation. Do you guys see that? Start reading verse 35 through. The magistrate and the officers go back and forth. They go back and forth. They go back and forth. They become their representative. They become the jailer becomes their representative. The jailer becomes the one fighting for them. The jailer becomes the one. God flips the script. This is why people have to be careful when they've made up in their mind they're going to be the one to bring you down. Do you understand if you make up your mind to be the one that try to bring me down, God is going to make you the one to bring me up? You can't come for God's people like that. God will flip the script, and the one sent, the one bought, the one paid for, the one set up to bring someone down, God will flip the script and you will be the one to bring me up. Quit playing with me. Paul and Silas said, quit playing with me. Go back and tell the magistrate we are not going out publicly, privately. You started this public beef, let it end publicly. And you will march us out. And that's what ends up happening. They get escorted out. But the jailer becomes their attorney, their legal representation. He's representing them with the magistrates, which is basically the courts. But they're so shook up by what has happened that they acquiesce. So the shaking is not just about, it is about the release, but it's also about the release of others. And it's also about the shifting of paradigm. There will be a paradigm shift, the shaking in your life, the shaking that will happen individually and collectively is also about shaking up the paradigm. Put that in the chat. God is also about to shake the paradigm up. There will be a shaking in, good morning, hey, Augusta, Georgia. There will be a shaking, a shifting. The paradigm will get shook up. And the jailer becomes their legal representative to the courts, the magistrates. And he says, no, we're not taking your deal. Here's the deal. You flogged us publicly. You beat us publicly. You're going to escort us out. And you know what they end up doing? Keep reading it. They escort them out. They get a public escort out. All because of the shaking, which is prompted by their prayer and fasting. Their prayer and praise at midnight. And then God responds with a shaking. And so when we say a shaking is coming, there will be a shaking. There will be some things that will be shaken, shaken up, shaken out, shaken through. And part of that is the paradigm shake. There will be a shakeup in the paradigm. They thought they were ahead of you. Soon those who were ahead of you are going to be pushing you to get ahead. Come on, somebody. Those who thought they had more than you are going to be the ones to help you get more than them. Come on, y'all not ready. A shaking. God's going to shake up and shift the paradigm. It's a full shift in the paradigm. It's a full shift in how things flow. This is why people have to be careful how they treat God's people. You got to be careful how you treat God's people. Because because God will use people, use individuals to send a different message. They had set up to send one message. Come on, shaking of the paradigm, absolutely. They had set things up for one message, and their message, the message of the empire at that time, and this is important because it's empire at work, right? This is empire at work. The Roman Empire at work. This is empire at work. And the empire is now responding to the request of those they tried to put down. Listen, if you don't understand, I need y'all to catch this. This is God shaking up empire. So when we say a shaking is coming, it could very well be a literal shaking. The ground could shake beneath our feet, yes. And there is a shaking up of the paradigm, shaking up of the empire. And we see it happening. Did y'all see that press conference the president was trying to pull off yesterday? And they in there, you got RFK talking about people need to lose weight, and Pro Trump with his overweight self in there falling asleep. And then somebody else is talking, and they trying to prop up these billionaire, and one billionaire passes out, faints, and I don't want nobody to be injured or hurt. The reality is, guys, the reality is, the empire's being shook up. The empire's being shook up. Did y'all see what happened Tuesday night? Whole entire areas that were one time red flipped blue. And y'all, some of y'all saw my post. I said, listen, there were some MAGA folks in there with their whole MAGA gear on, but voted blue. They came in their red. They came in there flamed up like a blood with their red hats and red MAGA this, MAGA that, and voted blue. The numbers tell it all. And so we see a shaking. The paradigm shifted Tuesday night. That's why I think that man fainted. Put up all them billions of dollars. Do you know how much money they spent to shut down Mamdani in New York? And listen, I'm not necessarily a fan of politics and politicians. Anyway, politics is life. Everything is political. But things are getting shaken up. Billionaires spent millions of dollars, and that man won by not only a landslide, they would call that a shellacking. Baby, that's a shakeup. And so we see a shaking happening. Empire is getting shook up right before our eyes. What we see happen in Acts 16 is a shaking up of the empire, because empire that tried to put Paul and Silas unjustly in prison now has a bunch of the prisoners that are loosed, set free, and now they got to march, escort Paul and Silas out. The paradigm is shaken. There is a shaking happening right before our eyes. Empire is shook up. Read the rest of Acts. I'll read it for you. The officers reported this to the magistrates. I'm in Acts 16:38. And when they heard that Paul and Silas were Roman citizens, they were alarmed. Uh-oh. They came to appease them and escort them from a prison, requesting them to leave the city. Why? Because their presence was shaking things up. Put that in the chat. Your presence as a prayer warrior, your presence as a believer, your presence as a worshiper, your presence as God's woman, as God's man, is shaking things up in the city. After Paul and Silas came out of prison, they went to Lydia's house, where they were met with brothers and sisters that encouraged them. Then they left. They left on their own terms. The magistrates and the empire said, "Get out of here. Your presence here is shaking things up too much. Shook up our president, shook loose our prisoners, shook up our jailer. Now he won't even be loyal to us no more. He's all saved and set free. And now you want us to escort you out, shaking up the message that we're trying to put out." And what was the message that they were trying to put out? That God's kingdom won't be established. Listen, you can't listen. They were trying to shut down all of this to shut down the message of the gospel being shut down. So they were trying to shut that down, and God said, "I will shake this whole city. I will shake this whole city. I will shake this whole city up. But my message will be established." And the way we see the present administration, I'm going to say administration, ain't just one person, playing in God's face and playing with God's name and playing with Jesus and playing with Christianity, there's a shaking happening. And we see it. We saw it Tuesday. We saw it with all those clown show press conferences. And now let me bring it closer to home. Because not only will the shaking take place nationally, it's going to take place locally. It's going to take place personally. But what we are learning is the shaking, listen, is for the benefit of those who have been oppressed, for the benefit of those who've been unjustly treated, for the benefit of those who have been violently abused, for God's people who are just trying to do God's work. And you coming for us? So you don't have to be afraid when things around are shaking and shaking up. You ain't got to be afraid. Because through all this, what is happening to Paul and Silas and the others? They are protected. So there will be a shaking. There will be a shaking. But God's going to have you covered in the midst of the shaking things up. Yes, absolutely, Miss Jewel. Their presence shook up things. Yeah, it was shaking things up because God was shaking things up through them. And they said, just leave the town. Leave because you shaking things up too much. And that's what the enemy does. Isn't that what the legions told Jesus? Leave us alone. Don't come here messing things up. You show up and now we gotta come out this baby's body. You shaking things up. But that's what the anointing is for, is to disrupt, is to shake things up, is to not allow things to stay the same. And when I show up, you ought to your presence ought to disrupt status quo. Your presence ought to disrupt, right? And it's not you doing it. It is the power of God moving through you that shakes systems up, that shakes empire up, that shakes status quo up, that shakes stuff up. From the jailer to her attorney. Come on, Anna. And then the town elite and leaders have to walk them out, escort them. And the whole paradigm gets shaken up. Is a whole paradigm shift. So here's your homework for the weekend. Because we're done on Acts 16. We're not done with the shaking because next week we're going to look at some other scriptures. But we're rooted in this text, and we're gonna close this out on Sunday. Hey, Tahara. Y'all follow Tahara Renee Christie and make sure this Christmas, if you do decide to buy Christmas gifts and you are doing holiday things, please support Black businesses. And Tahara is the wonderful owner and operator of a wonderful Black business here in Southern California, Amor Prope. So please, y'all see her name in there, Tahara Renee Christie, in the chat. Follow her and support her beautiful Black business as you think about holiday gifts. But their presence shook things up. God used the shaking, used them to shake things up, and there's a whole shake up in empire. And we see the shaking of empire happening before our eyes. And it will happen locally, and it also happens personally. But the shaking is for the benefit. We said this in the very first lesson. The shaking is for the benefit of God's people. It shakes up empire. It shakes up the paradigm. It shakes up the process. But God's people are protected. God's people are protected. So your homework this weekend, come on, shaking up the paradigm. Absolutely, Anna. So your homework this weekend is to go back and read the story again. Reread it. We're going to conclude on Sunday a special sermon. It's Communion Sunday also, so if you're able to come in person, join us. But I have a powerful message we're preaching on Sunday, concluding this series on a shaking. And then we're going to get into some other verses next week. We're just not concluding the lesson, but concluding our lesson out of Acts 16. Out of Acts 16. Empire. We see empire getting shook up. And there's a shift, a shaking. in the paradigm. They set up things to shut God's message down, and God shook things up so much so that they have to escort